Hi again, everybody. Hope you're all doing really well. Back here for another video. So this is Safine's video of in three parts. So there's some finds that I got from Ben's yesterday. There's a handful of finds and pickups that I got from a friend of mine earlier in the week, which was unexpected, but very welcome. And also just a few records that I picked up today, and this is from my eagerly awaited, or I was eagerly awaiting. I don't know whether you were, but a visit to the lockup to see these records that had been brought down from Wigan from a friend of my wife's in the drama group, and it'd been a few weeks in coming because obviously my friend's declutterer business, who was responsible for bringing them down and clearing the house, had to make several trips to get everything down. I still don't think everything's down now, but the records were down. They came back, they brought those down over a period of a couple of weeks, along with everything else. And I was contacted yesterday to go and have a look, and I did. So these are in a lockup literally about 2 minutes up the road from where I used to live, which is quite handy, near Stratford-on-Avon. And so went onto the site. There's a lockup there. So obviously the owners came and opened up the container. It's actually a big one of these big containers. It was just stuffed to the gills with just all kinds of paraphernalia and stuff that was from our friend's father who died, it was all, he had an online business, and it was all media, things like a lot of film paraphernalia, movie posters, DVDs, VHS, all kinds of stuff really, none of which I had a look at, because obviously I was just there for the records. So vinyl wise, there was several hundred records, all LPs. I think there was one 7-inch single, some 80s hit. I can't remember what it was now, but all 12-inch vinyl records, and I would say 90% of them were film soundtracks. So on the face of it, it sounded really, really good, really interesting. And it was interesting going through them. The problem in terms of value and desirability was that the condition was pretty awful, to be honest. They hadn't been stored very well. A lot of them had been stored horizontally. So there was a lot of fogging on the records. Probably some warpage, although I couldn't really see much of that. The main problem was that the records were just trash. They were just scratched, very, very dirty. But a reasonable percentage of them were in VG plus condition. But again, the problem is the desirability of it. Going to be honest, not much easy listening, a little bit of easy listening, very little classical, only a couple of classical titles, a lot of films, but none of them which look like kind of obscure, no European cinema, no horror, sci-fi soundtracks, particularly, no kind of Ennio Morricone or a few Western soundtracks from the 50s and 60s. one or two of them in shrink wrap as well. A few from the 80s, quite a few from the 80s actually. But again, it's the music on the record. So even though some of the films were quite interesting, the soundtracks are unfamiliar to me, or a lot of them, or if they were kind of there were songs that made up the soundtrack. A lot of those songs were not music that I was particularly interested in, but quite a bit that certainly maybe of interest to people like Ben. So obviously I sent him some pictures, but obviously I mentioned nothing about value or anything like that, because obviously that won't be up to me to negotiate. So yeah, so after about probably took me about 2.5 hours to go through them all. As I say, quite a lot of them are trash just because the condition was so bad. Some were without sleeves, or quite a lot of them were without, certainly the outer sleeves, which suggests that they probably got water damaged at some stage. Sleeves were split, ripped, and yeah, the vinyl itself was just scratched and so on. But I did manage to find three albums out of all that effort, and they were happy with what I offered for them. So yeah, okay. So the first one is a soundtrack. This is one I've seen many times, usually in terrible condition, but fortunately for me, this one was in pretty good nick. So this is Joe Cocker, and this is Mad Dogs and Englishmen from 1970. And this is the double album soundtrack that kind of, whoops, nearly lost the record there. It kind of folds out like so. And there's no tears, no rips. The card's bent a little bit. There's a little bit of ring wear on the front, but the spine's good. And both of the records are a very decent VG plus, albeit they probably need a little bit of a clean. And to be fair, with quite a large percentage of the records, that was the main problem, was that the records themselves were in good condition. VG plus, it's just that they were just very, very dirty and needed a lot of cleaning. But in some cases, the records are actually in better condition than the covers, because none of the covers had PVC or evidence of any sort of plastic sleeves on the jackets. As I say, they were stored horizontally as well, which obviously isn't ideal for vinyl over a long period of time, particularly for those at the bottom of the pile that were under a lot of weight. And yeah, so, but yeah, really, really good. Some great cover versions on this. Honky Tonk Women, Sticks and Stones, Crimea River. She came in through the bathroom window. Girl from the North Country, and of course Delta Lady, Leon Russell's song. Fantastic, belted out as only Joe Cocker could. So yeah, really happy to get that in the collection. And then this one was a real surprise to see this, because there was no folk music whatsoever. I mean, obviously in a collection predominantly of soundtracks, certainly didn't expect to see this, but found this. This is Club Folk, and this is volume 2. So this is artists, I believe, that were signed to the Peg label in the early 70s. This is in really, really nice condition. I think this is from 1972. And just contains a really, really nice collection of progressive and sort of traditional folk artists from the time. So you've got Sheila MacDonald, Synesthesia, Robin Scott, Keith Christmas, Martin Carthy, Dave Swarbrick, Andy Roberts. Yeah, just really, really nice. Textured sleeve in lovely condition. Not sure how many of these were released in this series, whether there was any more after this one. But yeah, certainly be looking out for the first volume to go with it. So yeah, that was really nice find too. Okay, and then the last one is this, which is Denny Doherty. And this is his debut album, What You Gonna Do. So Canadian singer, wasn't really at all familiar with this. Transpires he was actually in the Mummers and Poppers, which I should have known really, shouldn't I? But I was always just familiar with Michelle and John Phillips and Mama Cass. Never really thinking about any of the other members. But yeah, so they split up the first time around in 1968. I think he was kind of like milling about, looking for something to do. By all accounts, he owed the president of ABC, or Dunhill, certainly the record company, some money. So it was deemed that he should record an album to fulfill a financial obligation that was outstanding, which is an interesting way of being forced to record an album, isn't it? But yeah, so by all accounts, it's in the kind of vein of kind of the country rock at the time, sort of Graham Parsons and so on. I've never heard it, so I don't know. But then any album with a guy in a wilderness lying in a bath, Tim Bath, is always going to be intriguing. So, yeah, looking forward to giving that one a spin. This one's on Capitol. No, it isn't. It's on Dunhill, ABC. Okay, so records I picked up earlier in the week. A friend of mine, who's got a declutter business, he often finds records in when he does house clearances, and on the odd occasion that he finds anything half decent, he always gives me first dibs on them, and he's been very kind with that. He did tell me that his brother had some records which he wasn't really listening to and kind of let go. Asked me if I'd be interested in them. I think there are more, but he just sent originally a list of about 8 of them. A couple of them I already had, a couple of them I wasn't interested in, but these 4 I definitely was, because they're artists that I like that never actually owned, and they're all in really minty condition as well. As he said, he told me that his brother just never really played them, to be honest with you. So, and they've obviously been stored very well as well, because there's no spine wear damage. There's no bleaching from sort of being left in the sun or anything like that. So the first one is this, which is the worst of Ashton, Gardner and Dyke. So this is Tony Ashton, Kim Gardner and Roy Dyke, respectively. This is a fairly short-lived English blues, sort of blues outfit with kind of jazz leanings from the early late 60s, early 70s. They did 3 albums. This is their second one from 1970. Lovely original flip back cover. And this one is on Capitol, so this is the one I was thinking of earlier, just the brain fart. So yeah, it's that yellow Capitol label. They had a top 40 hit in America as a one-off hit, which I can't think what it is off the top of my head. It's not on this album. I think this was released after this album came out. So yeah, they did one other album after this, and I think they did a couple of soundtrack albums with the help of John Lord from Deep Purple that I'm not familiar with, but yeah, and quite an upbeat listen. Tony Ashton's got quite a powerful vocal delivery, and yeah, grab me. It's a good upbeat listen. So that's The Worst of Ashton, Gardner and Dyke. Okay, this one is a band I'm fairly familiar with. I have their first two albums, and yeah, I was very happy to get this one to add to the collection. This is their third album. This is Oisa Heads. This is their 1972 release. So yeah, Oisa, kind of Afrobeat band made up of English and African musicians. Yeah, very kind of groundbreaking, sort of BT kind of funky, very upbeat music. Some of it instrumental, some of it vocal. I seem to recall a few years ago I listened to most of their 70s discography online, and I seem to recall that the first two albums were the strongest, which were the ones which kind of held my attention the most, and I'd almost disregarded this one, but on listening to it again, it's a really, really good listen. I'd say it's definitely on a par with the first two. So yeah, really, really happy to add that one to the collection. Okay, this is one that I have heard, but I've never owned. Seen it around an awful lot. It's a very it's a very easily available album to get. So this is Mahavishnu Orchestra and Birds of Fire. So this is John McLaughlin's band, just a kind of super group, sort of jazz fusion. I guess they're probably one of the first jazz fusion bands. I think this was their second album from 1973. So yeah, you've got Rick Laird, Jan Hammer keyboards, John McLaughlin obviously on guitar, Jerry Goodman and Billy Cobham on drums. Stellar musicians, wonderful incredible musicianship, and yeah, really, really nice listen. This is like an original copy with the kind of textured sleeve, a little bit of ring wear on the back, but nothing major. Original press on CBS, and it's in lovely, lovely condition. Okay, and then the fourth album is an album I've never bought, because I remember listening to it quite a long time ago, and there was only really a couple of tracks that I liked on it, but it's so minty, that I thought I can't resist having it, and for the money that I got it for, yeah, very very pleased with it. So this is John Lennon and Walls and Bridges from 1974. So I think this was his last studio album before Double Fantasy. So there was like a 5-year gap. But it's just in lovely, lovely condition. On the original Apple there, with the lyric inner. It's kind of got drawings and pictures that he made while he was at school. There's one there of his teacher. And the way that the sleeve is configured, you can kind of mix and match the expressions. So yeah, the gimmicks covers in the 70s, yeah, always good fun. And it's minty condition, and don't always see it with the little booklet as well. So very very pleased to get this. Obviously, you've got the wonderful singles, Whatever Gets You Through the Night with Elton John, and the sublime Number 9 Dream, which is just fantastic and worth the price of admission alone for that. But yeah, it's got some quite nice other tracks. Old Dirt Road I quite like. Scared is a really nice track as well. It's actually better than I remember it, to be fair, which is sometimes the way with records that you've sort of played many years ago and then you kind of revisit them years later. So very pleased with that. Okay, and then there's 4 more that I picked up from Ben's yesterday. So this one's one that I've bulked on buying because I've never seen it in the condition that I wanted it. But it's I think certainly one of his best. This is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and 79 release Damn the Torpedoes. Really, really strong Tom Petty album. This very consistent. You got Refugee, Here Comes My Girl, Even the Losers, Don't Do Me Like That. Well, there's not really a bad song on it. Ends with a sort of epic Louisiana Rain. On MCA. That came with the original inner. So yeah, I mean, for me, this is kind of on a par with Wildflowers in terms of consistency. I mean, there's Full Moon Fever and Into the Great Wide Open. There's other albums of his that I've heard where I like tracks. I could make a really good compilation from those albums, but there's not many that I'd really want to listen to all the way through that would hold my attention. This is definitely one of them. So yeah, really pleased to finally get that in the collection. Okay, and then thumbing through his Ben's soundtracks, I came across this. This is Richard Thompson's music soundtrack from the music from Grizzly Man, which is a Werner Herzog film, which I haven't seen, but I've heard an awful lot about, and I know it's got a great reputation. I've heard 1 or 2 people on the VC talk very highly about this album, saying that it's a really, really great listen. I think Chris from Suffolk Record Collector showed it, albeit it was a version with a different cover. So this is like a tip-on jacket edition that was actually one of Ben's that he was selling from his collection. Just absolutely mint. In fact, it was still in the shrink wrap. But yeah, I don't keep things in the shrink wrap anymore. They just come straight off, no messing about. But it did have obviously the OB as well. I can't resist seeing what's on the gate in the gatefold, basically. So obviously pictures there from the recording process. So yeah, I'm not together when this came out. I think it was about 15 years ago, was it? Something like that. But yeah, I'm on a real Richard Thompson kick at the moment, and really enjoying his work. So I'm kind of picking up most things, most records that I see of his that I know are worth picking up and adding them to the collection. And really glad to have this one. Okay, and then this is a band that I used to have a tape of years ago, probably going back to about late 80s, early 90s. A friend of my brother's was a huge fan of this group. So this is The Replacements, and this is I believe this is their debut album, Let It Be. Bit of a kind of nod to the Beatles there, I think. So yeah, American band, had a reputation for being incredibly drunk on stage, and one journalist quoted as saying that depending on what night you saw the band live, they were either the best band you'd ever seen or the worst band. So but yeah, just really uncontrollable sometimes, apparently, on stage, very erratic. But I guess that's probably was part of the appeal of seeing them kind of be, it's kind of unpredictable. You never quite knew what you were gonna expect. So, but yeah, this is a really good listen. This is their early period when it's quite punky, very direct. Songwriting's really sharp. There's a couple of really, I Will Dare, the first two songs, I Will Dare and Favourite Thing, are fantastic. And then Androgynous is really great as well. They do a version of Kiss's Black Diamond, where apparently Gene Simmons saw them do that at a gig and was so appalled by it that he actually walked out the club. What else is there? There's a really nice ballad on here as well. I think it's 16 Blue, which is one of my favourites. That's really nice. Yeah, so apparently their later stuff, this is a reissue. The originals of their albums are just virtually impossible to find. But their later stuff, before they disbanded, apparently they got mellower, and it's less punky, less power poppy. They did a song called Sadly Beautiful, which is just fantastic. Beautiful ballad, which is worth checking out and on YouTube or Spotify or whatever your streaming service is. If you've not heard that song, that's a wonderful song. So yeah, that's The Replacements and Let It Be. Okay, and then lastly, I was lucky enough to acquire In Search of Space on Monday, just gone, at the record fair, and my luck with finding original Hawkin albums is continuing. And Ben had recently bought a collection and asked me, because I had a really battered copy of this album that that just was always going to be a placeholder. But he showed me this, and once I saw the condition, I thought, yeah, that's coming home with me. So this is a first, really minty first press of Hawkin's Space Ritual from 1973, and this is the original with the kind of psychedelic inners. Little bit of writing with the tracks on there in biro, but it's quite faint. Because of the pattern, you don't really notice it. The inners are really in good condition. There's no tearing at the bottom. Normally these are split. And this all opens up. And there's no tears on it at all. It's all really crisp. And then you got all the fantastic kind of Technicolor psychedelic artwork on that side. Another picture of Stasia, which I'm better not show again because obviously there's boobies, and don't want to get in trouble from YouTube. But yeah, really pleased to pick this up. I mean, it's just a fantastic concert, and is is just a great testament to how dynamic and how amazing their shows must have been at that period of their career. I saw them in 1986. There was no Stasia. The music they were doing was markedly different to what they were doing at this period. But yeah, what a fantastic, just the energy that comes out of that live recording of those two shows. Wonderful listen. And yeah, really pleased to get a keeper copy. Another one that can be ticked off the list. So yeah, thanks for sticking with that, guys. Half an hour, always longer than I intend them to be. My apologies. So yeah, I hope you've all had a really good weekend, and have a good week ahead. And hopefully I'll be back soon with another video. All right, you take care of yourselves. All the best. Bye-bye.